How's it going?
Good. Yeah, it's been a cool couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the my book just won a big award about 2 weeks ago, which is really exciting.
Congratulations. Can you tell us about the award?
Sure. So there's kind of just a handful of big children's book awards. The Newbery, the Caldecott, the Critter Scott King, and this one's the Pura Belpre, which is one of the bigger ones too. And it's basically a book that or books that honor and kind of speak of Latino issues or something, or just kind of like bring up the culture of Latino issues, that sort of stuff. So yeah, my book was a Pura Belpre honor, which was an amazing, like, it's the dream for me. So I was like, oh, it's nice.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything upcoming? Are you working on anything new now?
I've been going slowly, chipping away at a new book. I'm still not sure exactly what it is yet, but I'm getting there. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, are you going to include lots of references to time?
Time and weather.
Like, just, it might be subtle, but like, are these devices having any subtle effects on writing?
Yes.
Like, whether or not like people are intending it, but if you're going to write a time and you write down 11 a.m. and maybe you think, oh, I'll make it 11:02.
Yes.
Like,
Sure. I thought you meant the other way. That way, for sure. Time Villains is a book that's all centered around a very kind of famous, infamous, popular question, which is, if you could invite any three people to dinner, who would it be? And it's about a young kid, Javi, who has a best friend named Wiki and a sister Brady. They're Puerto Rican, and they have this big assignment to invite three people to dinner. And there's this mysterious table that they just got recently. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, the three people they invited are in their house. And it kind of moves from there. And it's called Time Villains because at the end of the day, one of the main reasons I wrote it is that what I loved about the device is I could take anybody, any character from history, fiction, mythology, and just bring them into this book. And as what happens in the series is in every book, so there's only 2 books, but in every book so far, they just accidentally invite one of the world's worst villains, like the worst villain in history, the worst villain in fiction. And then there's a reveal partway through the book that lets me write about tons of characters from fiction and history. So it's a big mashup. It's kind of like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but for middle grade. I just had a ball writing it. Like, it's just like a fun book. Well, one thing I really enjoyed about it is I like my characters to be like a little bit neurotic and quirky. And so I loved once they started figuring out what was happening and that somehow they were inviting people from all over history, they start nerding out about, like, wait, so how does time travel work? How does time work? And like, they get into this whole conversation about time and time travel. And that's always one of my favorite aspects of time travel books, is when there's like this meta thing where people step back and like, wait, how does this all work? How does the physics of this work? And there's so many different versions of time travel and how it would or could or should work. So I loved figuring out, like, what was my version of time travel, and then how would I use that to pluck characters from all over history.
Right. Do you have any I don't know, like, opinion or knowledge about, like, does time travel really, like, can it really exist in our world, or do you feel that it is like totally reserved for fiction?
That's a great question. I had a writer friend from a while ago who had told me that he thinks that there is a way that time travel can be invented, or just exist or whatever. But his take was that it was such a way that, like, people couldn't jump back and forth in time, but messages could be sent back in time. So he had this whole theory of, like, maybe messages have been sent back in time or whatever. I thought that was fascinating. This is like 15 years ago. He talked to me about this. But I don't know. There's always the argument of, if time travel existed, wouldn't we technically know about it? Or is it so organized and amazingly well done that it is somehow carried out without our knowledge of it?
Right.
So, I don't know. I don't know if I'm even hopeful of time travel. I think time travel existing would terrify me, frankly.
Yeah. Would time travel always lead to trouble? I guess that's a
exactly
question.
Well, I recently learned, and I can't remember where I learned this, that there's a theory of time travel where, so I feel like the prevailing theory is like the butterfly effect theory, when if you go back in time, you change one little thing, everything changes. There's a different theory, and I wish I'd looked this up because I wrote it down somewhere. There's a different theory that says the opposite, that says no matter what you do in the past, if you're time traveling, the future will always end up exactly as it is, which blows my mind just trying to figure out, like, how could that possibly be? So there's definitely, like, a few years ago, I was like, should I write a book about that? Because that to me is such a crazy idea that you could change anything in the past, but history is inevitable, or the present.
And I guess it's also like something about fate too. Like no matter what you do, there is a conclusion that you cannot control.
Yes, exactly, which is fascinating.
Yeah, but then that's a problem too, because then it like takes away responsibility. Like
100%.
Matter what I do, because
yes,
it's the same. Yeah,
this aspect is troubling as well. What I think is really interesting as I started, really getting into writing, and especially writing for kids, is I'm not a huge thriller reader. I'm not a huge mystery reader. I read like literary stuff. I'm all over the place. But as I started writing it, you realize that a lot of what you're doing is like, how do I move a story along in a way that like is constantly commanding attention from a child, which some kids are super, super focused. I was not focused at all as a kid. So I find that one of my favorite challenges in writing, I think this is true for any kind of writing, but definitely for kids as well, is how do you keep some amount of tension through the entire book? Because there's got to be some reason, you're kind of moving through it. And I think using time in those ways, and there's always the timeline, the deadline. Dan Brent always says, like, if you're writing anything like a thriller, there has to be like a crucible that the characters have passed through, and there has to be a ticking clock. And so even though I wouldn't call any of my books thrillers, like I'm always thinking about like, what's the ticking clock in this situation? It's almost sad what time becomes when you get older, because time is something that when you're a kid, half an hour is infinity, right? You can do like, half an hour, I could like play this game, I could play Legos, I could run around outside and do, I could play hide and seek. And I think as an adult, 30 minutes is 30 seconds. Like you're like, and they were done. So to me, time contracts so much when you're older. But I feel like it's this wide open expanse when you're younger. So I hope I incorporate that into my books. I definitely incorporate as much as I can the sense of vastness of things, where I love for my characters to kind of like, there to be like a vast possibility of like, this story could go in like a billion directions. Where are we going to take it? Like in Time Villains, it's like, here's a plot device that's like this infinite contraption where you could bring anybody into the stories. Who's it going to be? And the character's kind of like, what's going to happen next? So, yeah.
Right. I wonder if part of that expanse of time is connected to imagination, right?
Yes.
And possibility, like the excitement of like, what can I do in this moment? And maybe we have too many responsibilities.
Amen. So there's the famous, was he a philosopher or psychologist? I don't know, Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, which just talks about flow and the idea of flow, and that like the purpose of life, he believes, which I think is really compelling, is to achieve a flow state, is to achieve a state where like time disappears and you're just doing whatever activity you're doing. And, people always talk about like in different arts, that's something you like really experience in the arts, whether it's painting or music or writing or dancing, where if you can enter the flow state, it's like, you're in it. And it's not that your writing is necessarily better or worse, but you've entered a really special, almost like magical zone at that point. And I can't say I hit that often. Like I don't hit that often, but I do feel like when I'm writing in that way, it definitely feels like time is different. And then separately, people always ask, why do you write? And there's a lot of reasons, but there's one very specific reason. And I wonder, for me, and I always wonder if other authors feel this. So for me, it is that at the end of the day, when I lay down in bed and I have however long it takes me to fall asleep, there is this side of my brain that is reality, responsibilities, chores, kids, all of that. And that's usually most of my brain. But if I'm working on a book, my brain carves out a second half, and I can easily jump into that side. And I can do it when I'm sleeping. I can do it if I wake up early. I can do it when I'm zoning out, if I'm driving. And having that, it's almost like having an extra room in your brain, and you only have it when you're working on a project. And there's been times where I'm between projects and I don't know what I'm going to work on, and it's months. And I realized, like, oh my God, that really affects my mental health. I need that little room. So to me, that room is like this timeless place where I can just like, time doesn't really exist. It's this whole like other place. And that's where I kind of go when I'm constructing some new novel. The best writing you're going to do is the second you wake up until for about 2 hours. You have a 2-hour window. And if you could just wake up and you're like single with no kids and you can just run into another room and write, that would be the best writing you can do. But other writers are different. There are night writers for sure. There are people who swear like midnight to 4 a.m. That's not me. So before I had kids, it was very easy to be able to write in that chunk of time. Now that I don't, what I've done instead is I have my commute, because the commute is fairly early. And after doing it for so long, I built a habit where like my brain's like, okay, you're about to sit in the chair on the Long Island Railroad. You know where your brain's got to go. And it like flips into that mode. So I write on my commute primarily, or like regularly. And then when I can, I mean, I have a pretty intense job and 2 kids, but when I can, I supplement that writing at night or whenever. But writing in the early morning is absolutely impossible with kids. Hopefully one day I'll get back to that part.
Yeah, no, I feel like doing absolutely anything is impossible with kids.
Yes. Author clock has changed how I relate to time itself. Author clock has also changed how I write. I didn't used to do this, but I have some author friends who do it, and I think it's great, is they will very often just pick up a random book for inspiration, right? When it's writer's block hits. I never really did that. But what's funny is that that's kind of what author clock does to me, where I just like look over and like, you know, like I said, like what I love about it, it's so all over the place. So like sometimes it's just silly and it's fun. There's times that I'm not writing, many times when I'm at work and I'm like, oh, that's a good passage. Like I got to remember like some inspiration based on that. And now it's double because I have author clock here, I have forecast here, and I'm just like taking it in. And part of me is like, Victor, focus. But like there's inspiration on both sides, which is incredible.